we will start with this particularly interesting film.
So, Decoy Bride. Why did you say this particularly interesting film?
remember
I was
what
just
it was
sort of kidding.
gonna be.
Okay, so Decoy Bride.
Is it not particularly interesting?
Well, it's a sort of...
How should I have teed it up?
Mark, tell us about Decoy Bride. So, Decoy Bride, David Tennant stars as a
David Tennant?
Yes, David
He's going to be on the show very soon.
Suddenly you're interested.
He's going to be... I was queuing it up with saying it's an interesting film.
Yeah.
But David Tennant's going to come on the show very soon.
Well, he came on the show before, and he's
going to come on the show again.
And I should say at the beginning, before I start doing this, that I think I'm a little bit in love with David Tennant, as I think is almost everybody.
I think that's probably right.
Exactly.
Everybody loves him.
What that means is that in the case of Decoy Bride, it comes with a whole load of goodwill because it's David Tennant. So anyway, the story is David Tennant. He's a ropey writer who somewhere in the past wrote this best-selling book, The Ornithologist's Wife, set on the island of Hegg, which is up in the far away in the Scottish remoteness. The gag being he's never actually been to it. He is attempting to marry a Hollywood superstar, but the problem is their wedding keeps getting papped. So they decide that actually the only thing they can do is they have to get married somewhere really, really remote. In fact, there's a kind of Doctor Who gag when she says, well, like where? Outer space. Can we go there? So the publicists decide to take them to Hegg. Gag is, therefore, David Tennant, who wrote a book about Hegg, arrives on Hegg, having never been there before in his life. And, however, this very, very persistent pap has followed them there, so they need a decoy bride. Enter Kelly MacDonald. Here's a clip.
Sorry, from the outside, your home looks like it might be open to the public.
My home?
You don't live here?
Not in this toilet. No. Here we live in primitive dwellings anthropologists like to call houses.
Please forgive me. I've spent a lot of time with hermits.
For someone in marketing, you're not very good at lying.
I'm still quite junior.
Katie?
I'm Johnson. Johnson. And I'm quite lost.
So the story is they're on an island. He doesn't know the island. He wrote a book about it, but he doesn't know where he is. Kelly MacDonald's on the island. She's obviously Kelly MacDonald, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out how this is going to work out.
How does it work out?
Be a rocket scientist. Kelly MacDonald has to pretend to marry David Tennant to get the paps off. They then go off to a castle, but they're then locked in the castle because the actual bride becomes a runaway bride and goes, sort of off into hiding. So the paps are looking for the wrong person. Meanwhile, holed up in this castle are David Tennant and Kelly MacDonald. Now, okay, it is. You could literally look at the opening movement and go, okay, fine, it goes there, because it's an amalgam of, it's a bit Four Weddings and a Funeral. In fact, there are extras from Four Weddings and a Funeral. It's got a little bit Local Hero. There's the guitar score and a little, synthy, noodly thing going on in the background that tells you it's Local Hero. It's a little bit Runaway Bride. It's a little bit New Year's Eve.
But actually, well,
no, not New Year's Eve. What's that thing called? Leap Year. It is a little bit leapy ear.
Really?
Yeah, no, but nothing. But
in a good way.
Well,
because I can't work that one out.
No, not necessarily in a good way, but it has. I mean, it desperately wants to be, a Richard Curtis film on, that idea that you've got a sort of bookish Brit and a Yank superstar. Well, that's kind of Notting Hill. As I said, there is that sort of Four Weddings thing hanging all over it, and the whole thing is a little bit televisual, a little bit incidental, and you'd have to come at it with an awful lot of goodwill, not to go, yeah. But the thing is, you do come at it with an awful lot of goodwill, partly because it's one of those films in which David Tennant is making...
He's our George Clooney, I think, because you think...
He may well be, actually. He may well be. And Kelly MacDonald is a really sort of charming screen presence. And I think it is to its credit that when you consider that actually it is pretty close to being leapy ear, it's actually not in any way sort of, offensive or problematic. It is nothing other than a bit near. Because the other thing about it is it's filmed in the Isle of Man, and there's a key section. I mean, that scene there where they meet in the Hegg's only public toilet, and they're all talking about here we are in Hegg and it's completely remote. And of course, in the background you can see Bradderhead and Milner's Tower, which, if you know anything about the Isle of Man, it is the one really, really huge sort of landscape monument that you can see from the coast. And it turns up in things like Waking Ned, and it does make me laugh whenever anyone says, here we are in the Outer Hebrides, and you can see Milner's Tower. But, once again, it's an Isle of Man Films production, so, clearly I'm looking at the scenery and thinking...
Maybe it's part of the deal. Maybe if you're going to get a grant from the Isle
You have to have Milner's Tower.
Even though you're saying, here we are in the Congo.
Yes, that's right.
And everyone's going, well...
And here I am in outer space, and oddly enough, I can see Bradderhead and Milner's Tower. But the whole thing, I mean, it is... Don't get me wrong, it is essentially flibbity-gibbet nonsense and rubbish. But at no point did I get cross, annoyed, irritated, irate with it at all. And I think it's for a number of reasons. Firstly, it seems to be made, with it's not mean-spirited in any way at all.
Whimsy.
No, it's not. I don't like whimsy very much, and I am aware that as I'm saying this, I mean, it is a televisual throwaway, goes down nicely with a cup of tea, misses 89 minutes of your life. But at the centre of it, because you have David Tennant and Kelly MacDonald, who actually can take pretty much anything and make it charming and make it funny, even when it's all completely falling apart, even when David Tennant is walking around the coast of the Isle of Man pretending it's Heg, dressed as Kelly MacDonald's father, and then making jokes about bagpipe records, still somehow it manages to hold itself together. It's clearly destined for the video shelves, but not in a bad way. It is clearly televisual, but hey, there we are. And somehow it's one of those things when I didn't have any bile towards it at all.
Did you think of him at all at any stage as Barty Crouch Jr. doing that lippy thing?
No, nor did I think of him as Doctor Who, because I just think he's a good, charming screen presence, and he's got a very good way with comedy. And Kelly MacDonald is a really terrific leading lady, and it's. There's something about the film which is, despite the fact that it's referring to all these other movies that took millions of, I mean, you know, Four Weddings and a Funeral, I think became the biggest selling British movie of all time before it was, you know, outstripped by Mamma Mia. But this is nothing other than incidental and a wet Wednesday afternoon movie. But when you consider that people make that movie and it turns out to be Leapy Ear, which really was one of the most painful experiences of watching movies a couple of years ago, hey, it's kind of fine. And I laughed a couple of times, actually more than a couple of times, and I smiled in a sort of generally, you know, benevolent way.